Welcome to another episode on our channel. I'm very thankful I got some things that I ordered because I really wanted to do, after Germany for World War II, I really wanted to do the Soviet Union second. So I'm thankful I did get the things in and I could change course and do the Soviet Union. So we started with Germany in the last episode, the war being from 1939 to 1945, where Germany in 1939 invaded Poland. They didn't declare war on Poland, but they invaded Poland on the pretense of protecting ethnic Germans. What we didn't know at the time, or at least I didn't know at the time, is that the Soviet Union and Germany had signed a treaty called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Treaty. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but it was a treaty that was designed to last 10 years, where they wouldn't be allies nor enemies, combatants to each other. Now, if they ended up dividing any territories along the way, that would be okay. But they weren't going to fight each other or fight with each other towards other countries. What I guess we didn't know, but they didn't know at the time, was that, and it kind of makes sense, that perhaps neither Hitler nor Stalin meant to, I guess, honor the treaty. For sure, Hitler. Stalin, it sounds like he probably wouldn't have honored the treaty eventually. Like, bullies, eventually it comes down to two and maybe you're still going to fight it out. But Hitler beat him to the punch. Stalin was stalling for time to build up Red Army resources, and I guess didn't have enough time before he was invaded. So anyway, that just interesting tidbits of history. It's almost as if history keeps repeating itself. Countries invade, they don't declare war, they do it under pretenses. Then there are sometimes ugly divorces that take place. In this case, Germany and Russia, where Russia ended up claiming territory it wanted. And it just so happened Germany paid for the divorce, being split into East and West Berlin. Anyway, loss of life. That's bottom line, the worst thing about any war that you can talk about. Between 70 and 85 million lives lost between military deaths and civilian deaths. And the order is interesting, the order in terms of countries who had the most loss of life. In World War I, it was Russia who had the greatest loss of life. In World War II, again, it's Russia, Soviet Union, who had the greatest loss of life, followed by China, which kind of shocked me. It shouldn't have, because China and Japan were kind of going at it, and China paid with a lot of loss of life. So Soviet Union, China, Germany, Poland, so certainly Soviet Union, Germany, Poland makes the most sense to me because they were the original three, but China's second. And then we have Dutch East Indies, which is Indonesia, and Japan, India. And then I'm just going to have to read everything because I don't have all this memorized. But French Indochina, which included Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Yugoslavia, Romania, Greece, Philippines, Hungary, France, Italy, United Kingdom, Korea, and then the United States. I'm surprised at some of the countries that came up higher on the list than the United States. I know the Philippines was invaded by Japan and occupied for not a short period of time, but occupied. So there was great loss of life, but I didn't expect that to be a greater loss of life compared to the United States for some reason. My mother was from the Philippines, and I recall her telling stories of being chased by a Japanese soldier with a rifle and a bayonet. Now, I don't know if he was toying with her or she somehow magically got away, but she wasn't injured by the incident. She was traumatized by it, but not injured. So, yeah, the Philippines being way up there was kind of shocked. Several countries ahead of the United States. So it's the loss of life that is the tragedy to all these things, and people who weren't responsible for making these decisions to go to war. It's civilian loss of life that is even the greater tragedy. Although you probably have to readily admit there are people fighting wars that sometimes don't believe in the cause in and of itself. So anyway, it's just interesting history. So Soviet Union was the second country that made sense to cover. And we'll pause, and then I want to talk a little bit about this figure, and then do close-ups from the feet all the way up to the head, and then talk a little bit more about the history of this person I'm trying to represent with this custom. So we'll be right back. So I wanted to squeeze one female into one of these wars, and it just so happened that I ran across by a name of Lyudmila Pavlichenko, Ukrainian, fighting for the Red Army. She was a Russian female sniper. There were 2,000 female Russian snipers in World War II, 500 of which survived the war. She was one of 500. She's credited with 309 sniper kills. 36 of those kills were of Axis, German, likely German, snipers themselves. And one of them, she managed to kill after apparently a duration of 3 days, a 3-day duel where she emerged victorious. And when she retrieved his logbook of kills, he had over 500 sniper-related kills. So this was a very, as she reported, a very anxiety-producing situation where she had to be very still for hours at a time. And she could do that for hours at a time, crawl on her belly for hours at a time, stay still for hours at a time, and to go without food for maybe even a few days. So she was very patient with her moves, and she reported he made one too many moves, and 3-day duel ended up in her taking his life. So the 309 sniper-related deaths, 36 being of snipers themselves, and one of them being a sniper very experienced with 500 documented kills of his own. So she was the daughter of a locksmith, and her father was a locksmith. Her mother was of Russian nobility. She had a younger sister. She always athletic in life, but wanted to be a scholar and a teacher, and went to Kiev to get an education to do that sort of thing. Being a tomboy, though, she was into lots of sports, sprinting and pole vaulting, and also took a class on sharpshooting, I guess, and got a certificate for her skills in sharpshooting, and eventually decided she wanted to join the Red Army. And when she went to try to enlist, at first the recruiter kind of laughed at her and said, "You look like a model," kind of laughed at her, wanted her to go away. And she produced her sniper certificate, and he did put a stamp on her application, and she was allowed in. Initially, she was digging trenches, especially for communication routes. And the only weapon she had was one grenade to protect herself. And then eventually, one of her comrades, a male, was seriously injured, probably didn't survive, but before he died, I guess he gave her his Mosin-Nagant, his rifle, and she made two kills at 400 meters, and they started to pay attention to her, and she became officially a sniper and eventually a senior sergeant in the Red Army. I should back up with her history. We talked about her mother, her father. She was married before she entered Kiev, the military on the hills of Kiev University. She was married and had a son, and that marriage was dissolved when she did join the Red Army. She got married again, but her husband was a sniper too. He was killed. And as far as that goes, I don't believe there were any other marriages. Her son did survive. He died in 2007. She died in the 70s at the age of 58 from a stroke. So he lived much longer than she did. Again, 309 documented sniper deaths. Her nickname was Lady Death with the Red Army. Now, the Germans had a not so nice name for her. They called her the Russian bitch from hell. So, Lady Death to the Russian bitch from hell. And at various times, they would try to entice her to come to their side. They, shout out loud or somehow say, hey, listen, if you come and join our side, we'll give you chocolate and we'll promote you to an officer. And then when that didn't work, they threw insults at her. And I guess before she had an injury on the field, they said, if we catch you, we're gonna tear you into 309 pieces, which kind of pleased her because they got her death count correct. 309 confirmed deaths. She had a reputation, and she was respected not only by the Red Army, but the Germans as well, for them to make her a focus of enticement and then insults. And when she was injured with a mortar blast to the face, didn't create exceptionally serious injuries, the Soviet High Command ordered her to be evacuated via submarine. So they valued her greatly in terms of her skills. Although when she recovered, she was not sent back to the front lines. Instead, she was enticed to become part of the propaganda machine and was sent to the United States to argue or to plead for the United States, even though they had already entered the war. This is 1942. She was sent to the United States knowing no English, but to try to persuade them to establish the second front against Germany. And when she eventually came to the United States, she did pick up on the English. She was still young, 25, I guess, at the time. And the reporters apparently were quite sexist. They would ask her things like, how long are your skirts in the military? They would see her dressed in a uniform, and they would say, those long skirts make you look fat, type of thing. Or they would ask her about what kind of makeup they wore on the front lines, or what kind of underwear did they wear. And she really thought this was sexist types of communication, and one time became so affronted by the questions that she challenged one reporter to a fist fight. I guess that didn't happen, but it's kind of funny now. Anyway, she said, in response to the underwear question, she said, I just feel it to be an honor to fight on behalf of a great cause and wear the uniform of individuals who've given their blood to defend our great nation, so our great country. So, you know, she tried to put them in their place. And you know, if nothing else, you have to say she was good at what she did. And even as a spokesperson, not knowing much English, she held her own with the reporters in the United States. Anyway, just talking a little bit about this figure. This is a figure produced by Mo Toys, M-O-E Toys, M-O-E Toys. I've never gotten one before, and I'll never get one again, unfortunately. It was like things were wrong from the get-go. When I put the jacket on, it has elastic that goes around the buttons, and I use that little tool to put the buttons through the elastic, and like the second to last piece of elastic came out from the jacket. I'm going, seriously? That happened? And then when I tried to thread the belt through the ammo pouches, it looked like the little straps that the belt goes through was held by hot glue. And so the straps fell off. I had to glue them back on. Actually, what I ended up doing is just hot gluing the belts, the pouches, I should say, on the belt. The scope on the rifle fell off. And the wraparound that's supposed to give it a winter kind of look and camouflage type of look, the wraparound wasn't in a straight line. It was like a rectangle and a little piece coming down, another rectangle and another piece coming down. I had to cut it so I could wrap it, or I don't know, no directions on how to do it. I've gotten this in pieces, and the head on it is not the head that it came with, because the head on it looks pretty darn bad. You'll see that in a close-up. But I had it ordered a different head, and that one came in, and it looks great on this gal. What else went wrong with this thing? Oh, it's hard to put the periscope into the holder that holds it. I really had to work a few minutes to get that to happen. And oh, I don't even know why on the picture you would put a medal on someone who's in combat, but that's how the picture shows it. So I put the medal on there, and I had to put it on with hot glue. There's no way to put it on other than glue of some form. Oh, the gloves. The gloves are fingerless gloves, right? But one of the hands that I wanted to use that would grip a rifle, the fingers were not apart. So I had to cut it was like this, and the fingers were together. I had to cut those apart to try to get the glove on. And in the end, no matter how I tried, I couldn't get the fingers into the fingerless gloves because they were bent so much. I actually had to split the glove down the middle and work on one side and then the other side to get the gloves on. And finally, that technique worked. It was just like one thing after another. I've never seen, I mean, I've had maybe one other figure where something went wrong with it, like a button would fall off and so forth. But this was, every time I turned her around, something would fall off or break down. The belt is so thin, it's hardly hanging together. It's kind of fraying around some edges. So anyway, it was a litany of things that went wrong with this figure, but finally I got her together. So what we'll do is get her on another turn tray and start with her feet, go all the way up to the top of her head, and then do side to side shots. We'll be right back. You can see black leather-like boots, OD green pants, the holder for the periscope on her left hip, the butt of her rifle on the right side, fingerless gloves that I had to cut through to get them on. The jacket underneath the coat is the same color as the pants. The coat is slightly different color. Ammo pouches, binoculars. On her left side, the other part of the sniper rifle. The medal I put on because the photos of this figure had a medal on her. Although I highly doubt anyone would be on the military front lines with a medal attached to a jacket. She has the winter hat on, which can be untied and be cover for her ears in the cold weather. But yeah, she looks great. Unbranded head that looks a ton better than the head that came with the clothing. And you'll see that when we do some close-ups of this head sculpt and compare it to the other one. So we'll do some side-to-side shots right now. We are back, and you can barely see her fingers showing through the fingerless gloves. It was, I don't know how long that took. I kept trying to get those things on, and I just said, there's no way I'm going to get those things on unless I put a cut right down the middle on the inside of the glove. And finally, that ended up working. So we'll go all the way around. You see the binoculars here, the ammo pouches, the fingerless gloves, the hat, and then part of the pouch for the periscope. And you can see a lot better now the sniper rifle. Of course, the scope fell off. That was one of the first things that fell off, and I had to put back on with super glue. And wrapping this thing was a pain. I can't tell you. I had to cut the pieces. It didn't come in pieces. It was one piece that was just really oddly shaped. I didn't know how it was supposed to go on. No directions or nothing. Canteen there, you can see, right? And of course the hat. I have her in a walking position. So yeah, I think she turned out well. We'll pause now to get some tighter shots of her head. So we'll go side to side here so you can see some profile shots with this unbranded head sculpt. And I think it's a pretty good one for an unbranded one. Now, this is the head that came with it. Maybe put it on that side and get it up further. It's really white, elongated. I mean, it seems too large for this figure, actually. I didn't like it, so this is the head that went on her. I think it's a better match. So there you go. So here is the Mosin-Nagant, and it weighs a ton. It's the longest weapon we have, and it was the first weapon we purchased because my husband saw it, and it was such a good price. It was like $89, and it came not just with the bayonet, which is actually has a flathead screwdriver at the end, so you can take your weapon apart, I guess. But it had that as well as ammo pouches and some ammo with it. So it just had some extra things, and we thought it was cool and decided to get it as a result. So it has a straight bolt on it, as you can see. But my gosh, it weighs a ton. It came with the sling and so forth. And yeah. So I'll turn around so you can see the other side. My gosh, this thing does weigh a ton though. You definitely don't want to drop it on an antique table. All right. And just show you the side we always display it on, which is the bolt side. One more time. All right. So that's most of it in there. It's pretty sharp looking. It just weighs a ton. Out of all the rifles we have, I think this weighs the most. And part of it may be because it's so long and unwieldy. And that's quite a long bayonet too on top of it. I can't even get it in. There it is, finally, into the picture. All right, so Mosin-Nagant. We are back, and as is our custom, we do bring figures from the previous episode in to the new figure. I'm going to have another Soviet Union sniper that I'm going to talk about in the next episode to add one more Soviet Union figure to this collection. And since these two weren't representing anyone specific in real life, but this does represent someone specific, so I took a lot longer to talk about her story. The other Soviet Union sniper I'm going to bring in was a real person, real life sniper in World War II. So I will do that one separately, then bring all three figures back in to the picture. But I wanted to update you on this figure. If you remember, I had an old dragon head sculpt of Tom Cruise on this figure. And as I looked more and more at the head sculpt, I said I didn't like it. So I decided to change it out with a different head sculpt, and I think he looks much better this way. I also stood him up, and he looks so much better this way. I realized I had him sitting for a particular reason, and it's because his hands were so huge, like Mickey Mouse huge, those bendy fingers and just elongated. So his hands were disproportionate to if you had him at the side, they would really look odd. Like he's got some sort of inherited condition where his arms are longer than his legs. So what I did is I changed his hands out too. And this was easy to do because the gloves actually unbutton. So I could get the fingers into the hands nicely. Here, that was a struggle. It took me cutting down the middle to get these gloves on this gal. So I was happy for that. But he looks so much better. This head sculpt with the smaller hands looks so much better than he did before. I'm happy I made that adjustment. Sometimes it's hard to change something out because you're so used to seeing it. And I was so used to seeing the older dragon head of Tom Cruise on this figure. I almost didn't want to change it, but I am so glad I decided to change it. He looks so much better. This dragon head sculpt is one of the best ones that was ever made by Dragon, so I'm happy with this one here. So anyway, here's our figure of the day, Lyudmila Pavlichenko, and female sniper, the Soviet Union, Red Army, with 309 documented sniper kills, 36 of which were snipers themselves. So I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen. If you have, consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. In the meantime, everyone, please have a great day.